right, so we are going to measure the sugar with a hydrometer. Hydrometer, basically a bobber, and this is set to be accurate at 20 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius, or standard room temperature. Otherwise, we have to adjust. So if these came in at 14 degrees, at least the sample is on the counter. So how this works is how high this sits in the liquid will tell us the density, hence how much sugar is in this. The scale we use as bricks is basically the same thing as percent. So this is reading 24.3. We adjust the temperature. So we subtract 0.3, so that's reading at 24% sugar or bricks.
Is that something that's within normal? Or you want it to be higher or lower than that?
That would be normal for a whiter red. A white might be a little lower, but 24 is certainly acceptable. A red might be a little higher, like 25.
Okay.
So we typically bring in red grapes a little bit higher than we do white grapes. So how this works is essentially when we go to fermentation, roughly you get 2 sugar units, or 2% will equal 1% alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
you don't want to bring in too high because the wine gets burny, although that's a preference, that alcohol burn. Plus around 15–16% alcohol, a lot of yeast will die off. So you could be left with residual sweetness in the wine, which may be what you're looking for, but most likely not.
When you look at the bottle of wine, sometimes, you know, it says 12% alcohol. What's the highest level that you guys produce as far as alcohol content?
Depending on style, if you look at Zinfandels are typically brought in, and Petit Syrahs are riper when you bring them in, and that's just a stylistic. So you might see those in the 15% range.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I would say, generally speaking, red wines are going to run around 13% alcohol. White wines will run 11–12%.
I know. I had a glass of wine, and I didn't know that wine sneaks up on you. What is that about?
Depends on the wine. If it goes down smoothly, that's when it's dangerous. You don't know how much your alcohol
You actually, yeah. That's what the sweet wine did to me, because I had a sweet wine and I was drinking it. I thought, oh, this tastes good, great. You know, instead of pouring myself a regular pour, I was like, oh man, I paid for this. Let me pour a full glass, and then like, oh no, what did I do? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that is something one has to watch.
Yeah. So I wonder, when people come in for wine tasting, are they, you know, really understanding actually what they're, you know, how many glasses they're actually getting, how much percentage of alcohol they're actually getting.
Right, and it's, have you eaten something? What is it hot out? Yeah, the sweet wines can sneak up on you, but often the sweet wines are a little bit lower in alcohol. And like I said, that's a stylistic thing, so
Okay.
Maybe not. And certainly when you go into sparkling wines, the effervescence makes the alcohol absorbs in your stomach a little bit faster.
Oh, wow.
So
How long you been creating wine, or has this been something you've always wanted to do, or you just ran it, just kind of?
I've been doing this since I'm a teenager, but I'm 7th generation.
Oh.
Yeah, my family actually started Napa.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's
3
great.
Mexican land grants was what Napa.
A lot of experience in that. So how many wines do you think you've kind of created from your own experience and taste?
Oh, I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you're talking 3 years. Here we're working with 20-something different varieties. So, I mean,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
a lot under my belt.
Wow, wow. That's great. So you love this job, huh?
Yes,
Wow.
it's a curse in a way.
Do you find that sometimes when you're doing your job you make mistakes or something has happened where, oh wow, I missed this one little thing?
This is always something. So you have to be able to, you may make a mistake, there just may be something, and mistakes will happen. But, you know, you have to work with what nature gives you in many respects, and you can't control nature.
Right.
So,
Is there a
being
recovery?
able to fix things is
Right.
is a talent.
Okay. See, that's what I was going to say. You know, it can happen as a mistake, but can you fix it? And really, that has to be a talent to make that adjustment to bring it back,
Yeah.
bring it back to life. You know, and salvage a whole. You know, I don't know how much that would be, but in a big mistakes like this batch that you're doing now is controlled by what you're doing to make it for the future. So.
Yeah. So I mean, but the grapes are pretty clean, so that's a good start. So fermentation should go well. But yeah, there's always something that can happen. It's like people think we're only busy during harvest, and that is, we're extra busy during harvest. We are absolutely always busy.
Wow, wow. So what's the time turnaround for something you're pressing today till we see it in a glass?
Well, we're doing a white wine, so we're talking about this will be ready in about a year. We will be bottling it in the spring and ready to drink, you know, a month or so after that.
It's red a little longer. It's some...
Red, yeah, and the difference between red and white wine is not the color, it's how they were fermented. A white wine and rosé is really just a white wine, are fermented as, that would be fermented as juice only. Okay, so white wines and rosés are both white wines. Red wines and amber wines are where you take an amber wine is, or an orange wine is where you treat a white grape like you're making a red wine. So the difference is that red wines are crushed and everything is put into a tank, skin, seed, pulp, juice all together, and it's fermented with everything together and then pressed after fermentation, where a white wine is fermented as juice only. So what that does is you extract tannins from the skins and seeds. Tannin is a protein. This is what gives you that sort of tactile coating on your teeth, you feel. And it's going to be stronger when the wine is younger. That's why we age red wines in typically 2 years. If it's a really tannic wine, it may be 3 or 4. So yeah, the aging process mellows that, but that is also, those proteins are what give you what the French have done all the research for circulatory heart health.
Wow.
So it also, tannins are a preservative effect for the wine. So things that preserve wine are higher acid. So it's going to be higher acid in a white wine, lower acid in a red wine. As grapes get riper, the acid level goes down. Then higher alcohol and tannin. So those are the things that will preserve a wine, and it's a balancing act between those 3 elements. And you have to think about, you know, wine and beer is basically grain wine. Back in a time when maybe water was not necessarily safe to drink, alcohol was.
Right.
Yeah, a certain level of alcohol makes your liquid or safe to drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you talk a little bit about your education behind this. As far as did you go to school in any way? Did you do anything, or was this all brought up through the family and what you've learned over the years?
Well, I went to school for this, so my background was more out of the vineyards. So viticulture is what I went through, and I apprenticed. Once out of college, they don't just hand you the keys to. I apprenticed for 2 years under 2 different winemakers.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I always say one winemaker taught me how to do everything right. Another winemaker taught me how to fix things.
Yeah. What a combination! What a combination! What you need to be in charge of such the responsibility. Talk about the responsibility that this, the weight on your shoulders each season.
Well, yeah, but it's stressful this time of year, particularly because you have to figure everything at the winery relies on what you're doing here in production. And it's not just like making Coca-Cola, and we're not just adding things. We're trying to manipulate what's going on naturally. There's a lot in the vineyard that has to be done. So I'm working with our vineyard manager. Okay, what are we going to do with this? What are the weather conditions? Is there something we can do to help the weather conditions, the situation that the weather is getting us? He wants his ball. Okay. And just dropped into a bucket. Now we can't get to it again. Yeah, so some of the things that we might be able to do if we get moisture, we do some leaf removal to get air circulation. I mean, quality starts in the vineyard, which people forget. So,
are you out there in the vineyard? Do you walk the vineyard?
Yeah, I go out in the vineyard, yes. So I'm not as familiar. I just started in January, so I'm still getting more familiar with the vineyard and the conditions. So I rely heavily on our vineyard manager to know what he's doing.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, and that, again, is something that someone has to develop experience.
Yeah. You got to have a good camaraderie with that person, too, to make sure you guys are on the same page to produce what, to take some relief off of you in here so that you don't have to, make changes or do those types of things. So.
Yeah, but I'm perfectly comfortable with the vineyard because I came out of viticulture, which is the growing aspect.
Wow. So are you comfortable in here? When you come in here, do you find like, this is where I feel the most energy for what I do when I come in my lab?
We take a lot of chemistry and do a lot of lab work. So I think my first job in the industry was working at a million case winery as a lab technician. So I'm comfortable doing the lab work, but a lot of the complicated stuff we would send out anyway, since we don't necessarily have all the equipment in a winery to send. But it's a decent lab here.
Do you create any wines for particular people? Do you guys come up with certain brand for a company or something like that, or business?
They call that custom crush. I mean, some wineries do a lot of that. We don't. We have done some of that here. Not necessarily what we want to be doing. So when the ownership changed, we kind of moved away from that. Really, we want to be making our own wines instead of specs for other people, because you have more control over your own wine,
right?
And you're putting more energy when you have customers that you're making wine for. You're putting more energy into making their wine probably than when you should be focused on your wine.
Wow.
So yeah.
What is the next process after you've done this? What do you normally do now that you know the sugar content of what you're pressing? What do you do in your process next?
Well, we brought in white Riesling. We're pressing it right now. that juice is going to settle for a good 2 days. As you saw, it's not clear. And it's already settling in this already.
Right.
So we are going to settle this more. We put something in there to, help settle it, bentonite, which is a clay. So that will help settle it out better. The cold, we put enzymes in there to help settle it out as well. So we'll settle this out, cold tank for 2 days. We will rack, that will be pumping off the clear juice into another tank, throw out the,
the soot or whatever's at the bottom.
The schmutz, I like to call it, at the bottom of the tank. That will go into the vineyard.
Does that help? Does it help the vineyard when you put that stuff back in there?
It basically becomes like a mulch.
Okay. I'm wondering.
What's out there will kind of ferment into the ground.
Right.
And then it will. We will start fermentation in that tank of juice, and that will go on for a good 2 to 3 months.
So, do you pump out what's in there now, or is that sitting for 2 days? What's in the bottom of that you pressed?
We pump that into a tank.
Oh, okay.
And it's a refrigerated tank. The cold will help keep it stable and settle out. Now, refrigeration, basically, we're talking about, this is something new in the last 100 years or so.
That process right there.
Yeah, so I mean, most of our advancements have done technological advances in winemaking have happened more in the last 100 years, with electricity, filtration, those sorts of things that have added to what we can do with winemaking. But I always say winemaking is the second oldest profession in the world. So not a lot of changes in the last 9,000 years until the last 100 years or so.
Yeah. And that's because what did you equate that to? What's the reasoning for the last 100 years changes? And is it just the fact that old?
The other things that will, advancements in technology that help us be more effective. Like I said, refrigeration is something that we didn't necessarily have control over. You could put things in a cave and keep it cooler that way. You were sort of basically hindered by your region, if you would, or driven by what you do for your region. So there's different traditions in different areas by your climate. So if you were farther north in northern Europe or Asia, you'd have cooler conditions. You'd have to have also be growing different grapes that would be suited for a cooler climate.
Wow. So this is it's really a process in making wine. It's just not thrown up and put in there and let it sit and ferment. It's time, it's energy, it's patience, and all of those things to produce a good wine. What do you consider one of the great wines of the winery you're working at today?
We do very good Petite Syrah. It's in here. We are hot climate, so that's playing to the strengths of our area. Also, our Bordeaux are very nice. Certainly, we have a Bordeaux being Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Merlot, which Napa is known for. We have a very different climate for that, but a lot of it too is our soils. So we're not doing what they do. So don't expect the same sort of character.
That's kind of one of those things where people, you could have the same type of wine, but based off of where you are growing the grapes and how that process is, it's different in certain ways, that everybody don't know. Can you talk about the difference and certain wines that are drastic?
Oh, well, that's pretty broad.
Yeah, yeah. You could narrow it down to certain white wines or red wines that are, that
Well,
kind of have a kind of a range, even though it's the same
let's
wine.
talk about climate.
Yeah.
What the effects are. For one example is there's Chardonnay, hot climate Chardonnay versus cold climate Chardonnay. Some grapes are going to be more versatile than others. Pinot Noir is a tough one. It tends to need to be grown in a cool climate. And the climate effect on grapes is, like I mentioned before, that as grapes get riper, the acid level goes down. So the effect of heat on grapes is hot weather will lower the acid on a grape, and that will affect your end product of the acid balance. So the effect of cool weather on grapes means you're going to have higher acid. Now, if you're in a cool climate, you'd want to be growing a grape that is going to be a lower acid grape. Hence, at the time of harvest, you still have the effect of the cool climate is that you're going to have a lot of acid still in the grape, and a grape that is meant for a hot climate tends to be a higher acid grape. So if you grew that grape in a cool climate, say Sangiovese, that tends to be a higher acid grape. If you grew that in a cool climate, at the time of ripeness, you could potentially have aggressively acidic grapes, which would affect the balance of the end product of your wine. That would be true for Zinfandel as well. Tends to be a high acid grape. If you grew that in a really cool climate, at the end, when it's ripe, you're going to have a potentially aggressively acidic wine. So if you took Pinot, for example, which is a low acid grape, and grew it in a hot climate, when it's ripe, it's going to have lower acid, and hence you're going to have a flat and flabby wine potentially.
What does that mean, a flat and flabby? Is that just something?
The acid balance in the taste. So, yeah.
What do you do for outside of this, bro? When you're not thinking about wine or thinking about process, are you writing? What type of activities you do to enjoy yourself, to take you away from this, to keep your mental balance?
Go to the beach a lot.
Oh, okay.
Lucky to be here in Southern California, where we are close to the ocean. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time near the ocean.
San Diego. I'm a San Diego guy, so
Yeah, I live in San Diego.
Oh, well,
so
you're doing great. You're doing great. Having all of that.
Puppy here you like to go to the Bark Beach, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like Disneyland. For
Oh,
dogs.
okay. Yeah, I'm